Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and tackle the immense pressure you are probably feeling right now to implement AI and implement it fast. Look, leadership wants results yesterday. Employees are looking for some kind of certainty, and it feels like literally every single business unit is clamoring for its very own AI transformation. But rushing headfirst into deployment, that is exactly where things go horribly wrong. So today, we're going to break down how to build an AI implementation roadmap for 2026 that actually works. We're talking about a plan grounded in operational reality, not just hype. There's this powerful observation from AI strategist Moon Yu, and it just hits the nail on the head. Most AI roadmaps are wish lists dressed up as plans. Think about the roadmaps you've seen floating around recently. You know the ones. They usually include every single use case anyone ever threw out in a brainstorming meeting, all arranged neatly on a timeline that basically assumes unlimited resources, perfectly clean data, and zero organizational friction. And yeah, they look incredibly compelling in a board presentation, but plans like that, they rarely survive contact with reality. So to fix this, we are going to walk through a pragmatic, sequenced blueprint. Here's our agenda. We'll start by tackling wish lists versus reality. Then we'll establish how to prioritize AI, walk step by step through the 5 implementation stages, map out our time horizons, learn how to avoid common traps, and finally look at powering the roadmap. Let's get into it. Section 1, wish lists versus reality, and why sequencing matters way more than speed. The natural instinct for most AI programs is just to move as fast as humanly possible. But here's the catch. Organizations that skip the foundational steps usually end up slowing down the most dramatically later on. You essentially have 2 choices. You can either launch an exploding rocket of theoretical, unquantified ideas, or you can carefully build a structured, solid brick archway. A real roadmap accepts a hard truth. Some initiatives just have to wait while the infrastructure is built. It's not just a feature backlog. It's definitely not a vendor's highly optimistic deployment schedule. A genuine roadmap makes the tough prioritization decisions up front, and it treats governance and infrastructure as absolute prerequisites, not as afterthoughts you figure out later. So how do you know if you have a real roadmap? Well, your plan absolutely must answer these 5 distinct questions. 1. What are we implementing and in what order? 2. Why this specific sequence rather than another? 3. What prerequisites are needed? 4. Who, specifically, is responsible? And 5, how are we going to track progress? If your working document cannot answer all 5 of these questions clearly, I hate to say it, but it's not a roadmap. It's just a collection of good intentions. Moving on to Section 2, prioritizing AI and establishing your baseline. Figuring out what actually goes into the plan first is absolutely crucial. And you can't just guess. This requires a highly structured assessment of your data, your tech, and your people. You've got to evaluate every use case based on 3 combined factors. First is business value. What's the measurable impact? Can you actually quantify the cost reduction or the revenue boost? Second is implementation readiness. Is your data actually clean and accessible right now? And third is strategic fit. Does this use case establish shared infrastructure that's going to compound in value later? Listen closely to this part because it's important. Even a high business value initiative should not start if your implementation readiness is too low. Those stay firmly on the backlog until conditions change. All right, Section 3, the 5 implementation stages. Let's look at this step-by-step blueprint. Let's see how all these pieces actually build into an operational manual for your organization. There are 5 sequential stages to building your plan. You start in months 1 and 2 by assessing and aligning. Now, this is where you intentionally surface uncomfortable leadership disagreements early, way before they turn into ridiculously expensive problems. After that, you prioritize use cases based on the baseline we just talked about. Next, you design the roadmap structure, then explicitly define dependencies, and finally, build review cycles. Keep in mind, a roadmap is a living document. Without formal quarterly review cycles, the whole thing becomes obsolete the second business conditions shift. Section 4, mapping time horizons and structuring the timeline. When we take those prioritized stages and map them out, a well-structured AI implementation roadmap usually runs across 3 distinct horizons over about a 3-year period. Horizon 1 is 0 to 6 months. And notice this, success here is measured in learning, infrastructure, and readiness, not in massive deployed systems. You are basically proving the model. This lays the groundwork for Horizon 2, 6 to 18 months out, where you deliberately scale and move those pilots into production. Ultimately, this leads to the compounding value you'll see in Horizon 3, where AI is finally embedded in core operations and optimized at a massive scale. But remember, just tossing an initiative into one of those horizons is only the starting line. Every single initiative on that timeline must explicitly map out 4 rigorous dependencies before it can take a single step forward. You've got data dependencies. Is the data actually clean? Technology dependencies. What exact infrastructure needs to be procured? People dependencies. Do you need to hire or maybe run a massive training program first? And governance dependencies. What compliance approvals absolutely must exist? If a use case has unresolved dependencies in any of these 4 areas, it simply cannot go into the wave you've assigned it to, period, even if the projected ROI is off the charts. Which brings us to Section 5, avoiding common traps, or exactly where roadmaps tend to fail. So why do so many AI initiatives collapse even when they have a beautiful timeline in place? Well, the temptation is to pile everything into the cart at once and let every urgent use case start simultaneously. Because, let's be real, leadership wants everything yesterday. But think of it like an overloaded cart. An overloaded first wave just produces underdelivered results across the board. And when wave 1 fails to deliver because teams were spread way too thin, it actively burns through all the organizational goodwill and momentum that a few small, highly successful pilots would have easily generated. Aside from overloading wave 1, there are a few other massive pitfalls you need to dodge. Ignoring infrastructure timelines is a huge one. Building data pipelines and governance frameworks, those are major roadmap items of their own, not just background chores. Also, building without an honest readiness baseline means your plan is essentially built on pure imagination. Treating the plan as rigid, that just creates a massive political liability when things inevitably change. And finally, whatever you do, do not fall into the trap of letting vendor sales schedules dictate your priorities. Vendors have their own deployment preferences and, frankly, commercial incentives designed to hit their end-of-quarter targets. Your business needs must be the primary compass driving your roadmap, always. Finally, Section 6, powering the roadmap with the operating model. To really close the loop here, we have to look at what physically drives this blueprint forward day after day. Enter the AI operating model. This defines exactly how AI is going to be managed as an ongoing, living capability. A roadmap without an operating model is literally a plan without an engine. It is that simple. Without ongoing team structures, rigorous measurement systems, and continuous feedback loops, a system that works perfectly on launch day will inevitably degrade over time. The roadmap and the operating model, they absolutely have to be developed together. And of course, none of this engine runs without fuel. In this case, that fuel is leadership buy-in. AI requires continuous resources and serious air cover, so you have to earn executive trust. How do you do that? Show you're working. Walk your stakeholders through the prioritization logic so they completely understand the why behind the what. Connect every abstract initiative directly to a quantified business outcome. And be completely, brutally honest about the uncertainties and your mitigation strategies. A roadmap that promises absolute certainty is going to lose all credibility the very second your first pilot hits a snag. Ultimately, the test of everything we've talked about today comes down to how your plan is used in the real world. So I want to leave you to reflect on this crucial question. Does your implementation team actually use your roadmap to make hard trade-offs every single week? Or is it just a nice artifact, beautifully formatted just to satisfy a stakeholder update? A real AI roadmap makes sequencing decisions based on readiness, value, and true dependency, not just raw enthusiasm. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this helps you move your AI strategy from an abstract wish list into a sustained operational reality. Seriously, what's your first move going to be?